All right, so let me share my screen. So today we can start a new topic, and today we're going to be doing conditionals, data structures, part 1. So what are conditionals? So if you recall from English, right? A conditional is when we ask an if statement. It is quite similar in Python as well. So if you have a look over here, this is how we use an if statement. So if Boolean 1, so Boolean 1 over here will be any Boolean value or Boolean expression, right? So in the fifth line, we have print Boolean 1 is true, right? If Boolean 1 or Boolean 2, and then we have another colon, and then we have this indentation. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to us right now. So we're going to switch over to PyCharm and see an example of how this works. So first you have the if statement, right? Now you need a Boolean value. So let's say, let's make two values first. Two variables, x equals 6 and y equals 7, okay? And let's make z equals 8. Now we have if x is greater than y, okay. So what this statement means is that if x is greater than y, so if this Boolean statement is true, what will happen is the thing that is indented, right, after this colon, the thing that is indented will occur. But if this Boolean value is false, it does not occur. Okay, so let's see an example now. If we run this, you'll see nothing happened, right? We got no output, even though we have a print statement over here. This is because x is not greater than y, because 6 is not greater than 7, right? So now let's change it a little bit. What if we make it x is greater than equal to y, right? Now let's try running this one. Okay. Oh, we have to put a bracket around it. Forgot about that. Okay, it doesn't seem to want to work right now. Interesting.
Duramo Africa. Mati Africa policy encham amagezi olele yawe zamagezi ku US UK.
Sorry, what are you saying? Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, sorry, I was not on mute that time.
I don't understand you. Could you please type in chat? Okay. So, so instead of doing this, let's try doing something else. Let's create a Boolean variable. Let's call it bool1 equals x is less than y, let's say, right? Now this should definitely be true, right? Now you can see that this print is not being printed. Why is this not being printed? So if we do bool1, oh, there we go. There it is, right? So why is it printed now? Because this is true now. This time it is true. That is. Does everybody understand how the if statement works? If anybody doesn't get it, we.
I'm sorry, I don't get it, please.
Okay.
No, I don't get it.
Okay. So if we take a look in English, right? So for example, I tell you, if something happens, do this. What does that mean? It means that if what I'm saying in the first part is true, then you do the second part, right? You follow me until now?
I quite understand conditional statement, but this particular way is what I don't get.
Yes. So here you can kind of take it a similar way, right? So it says if, and then it says a statement. So if this statement is true, right, then whatever comes after this colon shall happen. Otherwise, it won't happen. So for example, if I make this untrue, right? Sorry, if this is untrue, right? X greater than Y is false, right? So if I run this, it doesn't work. So everything after the colon, that is everything that is indented. Sorry. So once you put this means that it is inside this if statement, right? It will only be run if this statement is true. The indented portion will only be run if this is true. Does it still not make sense?
I'm sorry, it still doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, let's try a different way, okay? So let's first give me an English example of an if statement. That you understand.
An English example of a conditional statement?
Yes.
All right. If X is less than Y and Y is less than Z, all right, I think I'm not getting. If X is less than Y and Y is less than Z, X, that means X is less than Z. I don't know if it's okay like that.
Sorry, what was the last part? You cut off a little bit.
If X is less than Y and Y is less than Z, that means X is less than
X is less than Z. So this is a true statement, right? This is a true statement. What we are looking for is a conditional such as if apple is red, then buy banana. This is something we're looking for, right? So if we want to, for example, make this statement into a conditional, what we'll do is we'll make a variable called apple. For example, we can give it the value red, right? And then we can ask the, sorry, what was I saying? Yes, so then we can do if apple red, does this make sense? So this we can change, this value can be changed, right? This I can make yellow also. This is the recreation of the if statement itself. So what we're doing is if apple is red, then we put a colon. This is what we want to happen. Then we want to buy banana. Make sense?
Okay.
It's clear enough for me.
Okay, thank you. So
On my part, I wanted to find out why you have the print inside moving inside. I think it's indented. Why?
sorry.
The print number 5 is indented. Why are you putting it inside? And it's not in line with the other statements above it.
I do have a lot of background noise. Could you type what you're saying in chat? I'm unable to hear you. Okay, I have muted the person. Okay. The print is indented. Why is that? Okay. So whatever we want to happen after the if statement has to be indented, because we might need to write code after this, right? So for example, after I'm done doing this, for example, I just want to add 1 plus 2 for no reason, right? Now this is not indented, right? So this statement will happen no matter what, but this indented statement will only happen if this is true. Does that make sense? So for example, if we run this right now, we get a 3 over here, right? This is because this statement is false right now because apple is right now yellow. And that's why print by banana does not happen, but print 1 plus 2 will happen regardless. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so this was only using one Boolean value. In a similar fashion, we can also use two Boolean values. We can do if Boolean 1 or Boolean 2, then print this, right? We can also use and over here, right? And all the other ones, all the other conditional operators. So let's go back to the presentation. Oh, sorry, to Python. So now over here, let's say we want to change this statement a little bit, right? If apple is red, or if flower is purple, then buy banana, right? I'll get rid of this. So now we make another variable called flower equals, let's say green this time. Now let's make this back to red. Can you please mute yourself? Okay, there we go. If apple equals red, or right. So now who wants to take a guess about what's going to happen? I'll remove this statement. Will it print it or will it not print it? Bomb it in the chat. No guesses.
The answer will be false.
True. Okay. So my question is, will it print it or will it not print it? And I want you to type it in chat.
It will not print.
Print.
It will print.
So we're getting mixed answers here. Let's run it and see what's going to happen. So it does print, right? So this is because when we have or over here, that means if either one of this is true, right, we'll print by banana. Now, if we had and,
Okay.
right, if we have and over here, then it won't print it because both of these need to be true in order for it to go over here. So if we run this, it won't print anything, right? So I see Phantom X's hand raised. Can you please, you can speak?
Just to answer, if the condition is or, it will print because it just respect one of two conditions. You don't need to respect the two conditions.
Yes, correct. So if we have or over here, it only needs to respect one of the conditions, right? But if we have and, it needs to check both of them. That makes sense? Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. Now we have if else. So now if we have a conditional in English, we also use the else word sometimes. So what does that mean? So for example, if this, then something, right? That's the first statement. Then we start another statement with else do this. Basically, what that means is you don't end up doing the first thing, right? If the first thing is false, then come to the second thing and do that. So this maybe sounds a little out there right now, but let's go back to PyCharm. So let's change this statement yet again. So this time let's make it, if apple is red, then buy bananas, buy flowers. Okay. So we don't need the flower variable anymore. So now what happened? I'm getting some background noise again. Okay, I muted the person. Please try to keep your mics on mute unless you have a question to ask. So in this case, what will happen is it will first check if apple is red, right? If apple is red, it will print banana. If apple is not red, right, then it will print buy flowers. But if apple is red, it will simply skip these two lines. It will skip the else statement. So let's try to run this. Right now it says buy banana. Because apple is red, it skips the else statement, right? So now if we make apple yellow again, what happens is it now tells us to buy flowers. Because apple is no longer red, it has to go to the else statement, which we have provided, which says buy flowers. So basically what this allows us to do is that in the case that the condition we're giving it is not true, we're still able to do something else, right? Is there any questions on this? Okay, so let's go back to the presentation.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, the statement is if apple is red, then buy bananas, else buy flowers. So when apple is red, buy banana, else buy flowers. That will print. But when apple is yellow, that means it will not print, right? I just wanted to confirm.
Yes, so when apple is yellow, that means apple is not red, right? That is why this statement is false and it goes over here. We don't have a check for whether or not apple is yellow, right? Make sense?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so over here, apple is yellow, right? But we don't ever check if apple is yellow. So in the context of these two statements, all we are checking is if it is red, or if it's not red, then it simply goes here. So even if it was purple, it would still buy the flowers, right? Okay. So now we have if, elif, else. So elif is a short form for what we call else if. So what basically we're trying to do in that is we don't have just two conditions, like if this happens and if this does not happen. We have more than that. So we have, for example, let's say if apple, let's make a new statement. Let's go back to PyCharm, right? So if apple is red, then buy banana. Else if apple is yellow, then buy I don't know. Flowers, right? And then else else window shopping.
Don't buy.
Okay, so now what we can do over here is make new statements, right? If apple is equal to yellow. Oh, caps lock is on again, right? And then we have okay. So let's try to do each case. So the first case is when the apple is red. So what should happen is we should buy the banana, right? So let's try to run it. And now we have buy banana, right? Similarly, if we change the case to when the apple is yellow, then we have buy flowers, because when the apple is yellow, we are trying to buy flowers, right? Now, if we make it anything else, now we have window shopping, which is our else conditional, right? Now, another thing over here is that you can chain as many of these elifs as you want. You can have 3 like this, or you can have 10, you can have 15, but the first one needs to be if, and the last one can be both an else or an elif. You can simply end on an elif. This is completely fine as well, right? So yeah, so you have to start with an if, you can continue with an elif, but you can end with either an elif or an else. Does that make sense? I'll give more examples over here. So
Please, can I, what's the meaning of elif?
elif is a short form for else if.
Else if.
Yes. So try to imagine a sentence that I've written in English over here up top, right? So if apple is red, then buy banana. If apple is yellow, then buy flowers. Sorry, else if apple is yellow, then buy flowers. Now the difference here is we can write this as well, right? We can write this as well, but this is different, and I will show you shortly why. Okay. So let's change the statement a little bit. Let's make it if pear is yellow, then buy flowers. Okay. Let's introduce a new variable in here. And let's make it yellow. And let's make this right. Okay, so I have a question in chat saying, why does elif have a full colon? So after each conditional statement, we have to have a full colon, right? That is how we denote that what is after this, what is indented after this is what we are trying to print, right? Does that make sense? So we can have multiple lines also over here. For example, if we do this, right? Both of these will only be done when apple is red. Everything that is indented and after this colon will be done under that conditional. That is why we use the colon to denote that we are starting the second half of the statement. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So now over here we'll have pair. Okay, I will return on why we are using the colon. Right now, let's try to see the difference between elif and if what happens if we use only if, right? So let's get rid of this statement. And I'm going to get rid of the English statements as well for now. You should start thinking in terms of code. You should start being able to see just from reading this, right? So when the pair is yellow, we say print by flowers, right? Now, when we have elif over here, an interesting thing will happen. So in chat, guess what is going to happen? Any guesses? So a popular guess I would think is it will say print by banana and it will say print by flowers, right?
I think we're going to print by banana only because
Okay.
that's the first condition.
Right. So that is correct. What else over here does is it will only go to this part of the statement, right? The else over here signifies that this part of the statement only happens when the statement before this was false. But the statement before this is true over here. So when we run this, we only get by banana. Sorry about that. So we only get by banana, right? This is because this statement is true and we have an else over here, right? I told you this is a short form for else if. We are just not allowed it to write it like this. We write it like elif, right? So now if instead of elif, we use if over here. Now does anybody want to guess what will happen? Will it be the same or will it be different? Okay, we have somebody saying different.
It will be different.
Okay. We have somebody saying same. Okay, so let's run it. So it's different, right? We have both now. So as we remove the else part of the statement, we were no longer checking if the previous statement was false or not, right? So that is what the else part of the statement is doing over here. That is the difference between if and elif. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Oh, wait. We also wanted to see the significance of the colon, right? So let's erase all of this. So now I'm not going to be doing English statements. We should be a lot more clear, right? So now, if we have if x is less than y, let's say we have print right. So this colon over here represents the division between the conditional part of the statement and what happens if the condition is true, right? So this is the conditional part, if and followed by a Boolean statement. Then we have the colon, which divides it from this part, which is what will happen if our conditional is true. Okay. And also we are indenting it because we might need to write multiple lines. We might need to do multiple things if that statement is true. So for example, we're printing hello world. We might also need to print something else. Right. We might want to do some calculations here. Let's say we want to make a new variable, call it z equals x plus y. And then we do print z. We can do as many lines as we want, but all of this that is indented will only happen if what is before this colon is true. That is the condition is true. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
It
does.
prints everything at the same time.
Yes, so if we try to run this, it will print everything, right? So for example, okay, we have a hand raised. You can go ahead and speak. Okay. Yeah, so I think everyone is clear on why we're using the colon, right? So if we, for example, move this over here and we make this statement false, right? So now it will give us an error because this Z was never defined because it never went in here, right? This code never happened. And because this code never happened, Z was never created, right?
Sorry, hello, but the Z was there already. There was a Z there.
We only defined X and Y over here, right? Then if X is less than Y, then we go in here, right? But this never happened because X is not less than Y. 7 is not less than 6, right?
So how was it able to happen the that time? I gave us the answer 15.
Yes, so that time I had Y set to 8. But this still won't work because of something called scope. We will get to scope later on. But for now, this is all you need to know, right? So basically what scope means is that if we go inside a statement, if it is indented, right, and we define a variable inside this indentation, it can't be used outside it. You don't need to get too much into the depth of this right now. We will get into this later on in this course, right? Is why we are using a colon clear to everyone? That's what is important over here.
It's clear.
Okay. So let's move on to our PowerPoint presentation. Yes, so we have more examples of how you can use if and elif statements. You can use as many ands, as many ors as you want. There's multiple combinations of how you can make if and else statements. You can try as many of these as you like. So now we have what is called a shorthand if statement. So a shorthand if statement is nothing but when we only have one thing to do after the if statement is true, right? So for example, if we go back to our PyCharm window, okay. So for example, this is all we want to do. So if X is less than Y, we want to print hello world. So instead of writing it in 2 lines like this, we can shorten it like this. But this is only if you want to finish it off in 1 line, because anything you write after this will not be in the statement. Please mute yourself. I see Tony, you have a question.
Yeah. That if statement, you say if X is less than Y, then the full colon, underneath the full colon, there's.
Yes, you need a
that
colon here
much.
as well. You definitely need a colon.
Okay, so the line underneath the full colon, why is that there?
Oh, you don't need that there. You can just.
No. How will I put it? It's like there's something that is wrong when you're typing something.
This is just formatting. This is formatting errors. You can ignore the green lines. Only the red lines you need to be worried about.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So if you hover over this, it will show you what is wrong. So it says multiple statements on 1 line. So if you go into deep formatting and how code is actually formatted, this shorthand if statement is actually looked down upon, and it is better to write it like this. I have another question from Umo. Please go ahead.
Why is there a line before the colon where we have the if X is greater than Y?
Oh, you don't need this line. It's just for formatting. If you have an empty line, it will simply skip it.
Okay, okay, that I understand.
Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. So now we have the shorthand if else statement. Now this actually looks neater, right? So this is actually much different than a normal if else statement. This is only when you want just one if statement with only one thing happening after that if statement and only one thing happening after the else statement as well. So now let's go back to PyCharm and look at an example, right? So let's say we want to do, so let's write it in English again, right? So that we frame it. So if x is less than y, then x is less than y, else print x not less than, right? Or we can say greater than equal to y, right? So now how we will write the statement is first we define our variables, right? We'll give them any values for now. Then we say if x is less than y, x is less than y, x is greater than equal to y. This is how we would normally write it, right? So put it in quotation marks because we want this as a string, because we want printed as it is. So now the shorthand way of writing this is we do print. We'll take this first statement over here, right? We'll take this statement and we'll go x less y. And then we take the first statement over here, right? So we say x less than y. Then we can say else. And then we can write the else statement. So I can just copy this and paste, right? So now we can get rid of this, and this means the exact same thing. Is that clear how we are using this shorthand? If you don't understand, honestly, I would say it's not that important. If you understand how to use it normally, I would suggest that is how you should keep using it. Yes, Tony, you can go ahead and ask.
Yes, I was about to say that why not just stick to one way of doing it?
Right. I personally, I have never had the need to write it like this. This is just, it is something that you can do, and it is just my responsibility to show you that, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
So we have conditionals, right? So they can also be nested. So what is nesting? Let's see over here. So what this means is we can keep checking further and further. So if we look over here, right? So what we'll see over here is first it will check this if statement, right? Now if Boolean 1 is true, right? Only then it will jump inside the indent, right? That is what happens, right? It goes, it sees if this condition is true. It looks at what is after the colon and it runs that piece of code. So now we run this piece of code, right? So what that means is we're checking is Boolean 1 true. So if Boolean 1 is true, it will continue this cycle and go inside further. So now this becomes the outer layer of this if, right? And this is the indent. I see a question.
Sorry, sir. What if is false? That is, when it is not true, does it mean that you are going to reach the number 1 before moving number 2?
So if Boolean 1 is false, what happens is it actually skips the entire thing and goes straight to else, right? Because that's what we learned. If an if statement is not true, it jumps straight down to the else statement over here. Okay, because this is the else statement that is on the same line as that if statement, right? It is on the same indentation. This is why indentation is important, and this is why colons are important, because what is inside that colon must be indented, and that's how we signify which if is connected to which else and which else. Does that make sense, Matthew? Okay, so again, if you have a question, raise your hand and I will ask you to speak. Please don't unmute yourself on your own. We are getting a lot of background noise. Okay, so let's get back to the presentation. So this will be more clear if we look at a PyCharm example. So let's clear this up and go back to the presentation. Oh, sorry, to PyCharm.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sorry?
Why do you switch from PyCharm to Python? Why not? Is there certain things that one can do the other cannot do? Why not?
No, I'm just switching between PowerPoint, which is what I'm using the presentation on, and then I come back to PyCharm. Those are the only two things I'm using.
Difference between PyCharm and Python, please.
So PyCharm is the IDE, right? And Python is the language. An IDE is used to run a language or to write in a language. So PyCharm is what this software is, right? What we are seeing right now, and what I'm writing in, the language I'm writing in, that is Python, and it helps us run Python. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, sir. It's not clear.
Yes, so Python is the language we are writing. So when we write, for example, x equals 7, or when we're writing if x is less than 8, then all of this what I'm writing, this is Python, right? This is the language Python. What we're writing right now is a language. And what I'm writing it on, right? Like, as we say, Notepad, right? So you can write English in Notepad, right? Or you can write English in Word, right? For example. So Python is a language and we're writing it in PyCharm. PyCharm is the equivalent of Notepad over here.
Okay, sir. Why not use Python directly? Why using PyCharm?
So how would you, so what if I told you you have to write something on your laptop in English and you can't use Word or Notepad? That wouldn't make sense, right? Like, what if I told you use your computer to directly write English without using a software to write it? That wouldn't make sense, because English is a language. We still need a software to write it in, right? So this is a software that helps us write code in Python.
And I maybe try to just ask if this is clear. We use the IDE because it understands the language that Python uses. That's what you're trying. That's what you mean?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Wait, so without Python, we can't use PyCharm. If you
Correct.
haven't installed, oh, okay.
Python is much older than PyCharm. PyCharm is actually very much new. I would think it's come out in the last 10 or 15 years, whereas Python has been here for much, much longer than that. Okay, so let's see some nested if statements. Okay. So let's make a bunch of variables as always. Now let's see. So now let's make it if y is less than 9. So print 1. So does anybody want to take a guess what will happen before I explain what will happen? Wait, you can't see my screen? Somebody's saying in chat that they can't see my screen.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
Okay, I can guess. I just want to guess.
Okay.
Okay, in the first case, it depends on the first conditions.
Right, so we already have our variables over here. So there's only one thing that can happen, right? So what will it print? Will it print 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Yeah, it will print 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, you said? It can only print one of them, right? Because these are inside if statements. Let's try to just run it, right? We have a lot of
It will print 1 and 2.
Sorry?
It will print 1.
It will print 1. Okay, so we have somebody saying it will print 1. So let's try to run it and see what happens, right? So it printed.
I think that is going to print 3.
Okay, so I've already ran the code and it prints 2. So I'm looking in chat and I don't really see anybody who said 2. So let's see why it's saying 2, right? So if we look at the conditional statement over here, first we're going to line 2, right? Line 1 is a comment, so we're skipping that. We go to line 2. Line 2 says x equals 7. So we make an x variable and we're giving it the value 7. Then we go to line 3, y is 8, right? We go to z is 10. Okay. Now we go to line 5, right? Now in line 5, we're checking is x less than 8. So is x less than 8? Yes, right? So if something is true, we go to the indented part. So we go inside, right? If y less than 9. So is y less than 9? Yes, right? So we check the colon and we go inside to the indented part. Now, if z is less than 9, is z less than 9? No, right? So we skip what is inside here and we go to the else statement and we do what is inside the else statement, right? So that is what happens. We get print 2. So now if we continue down to line 11, right? There's an else statement. Now this else statement will be skipped because the if statement connected to this was true, right? Similarly, when we come down to this else statement, this will also not be printed because the if statement connected to this is also true. Does this make sense? We have some questions in chat. Okay.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Sorry?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. So let's think of it in English.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
Sorry. Can I ask a question?
Okay, I'm going to mute you for now. I'm going to answer one question at a time, right? Let's try. Let's try to only unmute ourselves when I pick out your name, okay? So, okay, let's take this one at a time, right? So let's try to write this down in English, okay? So if x is less than 8, then if, this is what we're doing, right? Then if y is less than, so what this means is we're only checking if y is less than 8 if x is already less than 8. Oh, sorry, this will be 9, my bad, right? So then we're going again, if z is less than 9, then we're printing now. This statement would make a lot of English teachers probably cry, but for our purposes, this is what we're trying to do, right? Does this make sense to everybody? This is not exactly proper English, but this is what we're trying to do over here, right? This is until line 8 is what we're trying to do. What you're seeing in English over here, right? Does that make sense until now, until line 8? This is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I understand it better now.
Okay, so now let's try to see what we're doing after this, right? So now, if this z is not less than 9, then we're printing 2, right? Now there is no way to write it like this in English, right? Sorry, but this is what we're trying to do over here. So let me just clear this up so that you can see it better. Okay, so, and then again, if y is not less than 9, right? And further we go, right? Does this make sense? Was it Simon who asked the question?
Yeah, it was me that asked.
Okay, so you can raise your hands again if you have a question. I'll pick you out. There was too much noise when we had everybody unmuting themselves. Okay, so we have Aziz. Please go ahead.
My question is, I think it is clear now, but I just want to, if one of the if statement is false,
okay,
so it won't print one. It will surely go to the next. It goes to the else.
So you mean if which statement do you want to be false? So give me a line number.
Any line, okay. If line 5, even if any one of line 5, 6, 7,
okay, not so true. Line 5. So let's make line 5 untrue, right? So let's make it 10, right? So what do you think will happen?
I just still go to 2.
Sorry?
I said it will still go to 2.
Okay, so you think it will still...
It will print 2.
Okay, so that is not what will happen because we'll have print 4.
Okay.
Now I'll tell you why, right?
Okay.
So over here we're checking if x is less than 8. Is x less than 8? No, right? So what happens is it skips everything that is indented. Remember? Everything that is inside this colon and is indented after this line will get skipped, even if it is indented further, right? We only care about it if it's indented inside after this is false. Everything that is indented further than this if will not be printed out. We'll just...
Okay, if I may ask that.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Yep.
That means it starts operating from 7 to 6 to 5.
Sorry?
I'm asking if the starts operating from 7, it first look for 7, for line 7, before going to 8, before going to 9, and before to go 5.
So what happens is once line 5 realizes that this statement is not true, what it does is everything after this colon that is indented further than this line, right? all of that just gets ignored. It will not even look at it. It will simply ignore it, and it will go to the next statement that is not indented. In this case, that is the else statement, right? And an else statement is executed when the if statement connected to it was false, and this statement was false. That is why we print out 4, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
If there's any more questions, please raise your hands. I understand this is a tough topic. Okay, so looks like we're done for now. Let's go back to the presentation. All right, so we are going to start with data structures now, right? But I think we don't really have time. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to get started on this in next class. I'm going to take a look at your assignment. And if I feel like we are using too many of the data structures in here, I'll take it up to next week then, right? But if it only uses conditionals, I'll still send assignment 3 out. Does that sound good? I don't want to be taking more than an hour every time over here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. If you have any doubts, please stay over after class and I'll be happy to take them.
Are you going to talk about the assignment after this class?
Sure. You can talk about that. We can talk about that. So let me just